Sit back, relax. If there's anything we can do to make your flight a little more enjoyable, please don't hesitate to ask.
I'm going to share something with you that is both powerful and important. It is the understanding of what a constrained investor is, how to explain it to a prospect or client, and how to win the management of the client's assets. I'll share my screen and also share a module from the Income for Life Model Client Seminar that I present regularly on behalf of financial advisors. So let me share the screen and we'll delve right into this. Here we go. Okay, so I think, as you know, in the financial services, we categorize people according to how much money they have. We put them into these neat little segments called wealth segments, and we have middle market, mass affluent, affluent, high net worth, etc. And people fill into these little niches and then are served up products and services based upon the amount of assets they have. Well, this approach is okay when you're accumulating money, but it fails miserably at retirement. And the reason is it doesn't make room for some of the most important issues that retirees face, including managing the risks that can reduce or wipe out their income. Now, let me ask you to think about two questions which I consider the most important that retirees must answer. The first is, what type of investor am I? And secondly, what's my income? Because in retirement, we've already discussed in a previous segment here, it's income, not wealth, that creates your standard of living. So again, we have these neat little categories for people, but when we get to retirement, it fails. The constrained investor framework says we need to move beyond this. And with constrained investor, there are three categories of investors, and everybody can fit into one of these three categories. We have underfunded investors, overfunded investors, and constrained investors. And let me define them for you. Underfunded investors, just like the name sounds, they have little or no retirement savings. They're going to rely on Social Security for their retirement income. They're not your prospect. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the lucky minority of people who have more assets than they need to produce the income they require. Those are the overfunded investors. Basically, they can use any income strategy because they have a margin for error. They have more cash than they absolutely need. In the middle are the people that I care about, the constrained investors. These are people who reach retirement with savings, which is great. But the amount of savings they have is not high compared to the amount of income that they have to fund or create to fund a minimally acceptable lifestyle. Now, it doesn't mean they have a small amount of money. They may have saved a modest amount or millions of dollars. In fact, the largest constrained investor case that I know of was sold by an advisor from Osaic. It was Securities America, actually, $20.6 million. So constrained investors can have a great deal of money. It depends on what they need to spend in retirement that defines whether they're constrained or not. So with a constrained investor, it's not just about the money that they've saved. It's how the amount of money they save relates to the amount of income that they absolutely require. Now, is being a constrained investor a bad thing? Absolutely not. It's actually a good thing, because when you understand if you are a constrained investor, you're positioned with the knowledge to have the greatest chance of financial success in retirement. So let's go on to an example. We'll look at Paula's example here. So Paula reaches retirement with $925,000 in savings. She has a Social Security benefit of $2,200. She needs $5,623 every month to fund what I call a minimally acceptable lifestyle. Let me define that for you. She has two types of expenses, as retirees typically do. There are vital or essential expenses, things like housing, insurance, transportation, food, clothing, utilities, prescription drugs, or taxes. Let's say that these essential or vital expenses add up to $4,325 per month. But on top of that, she has expenses for the kinds of things that add a little more enjoyment and fulfillment to retirement. Occasional travel, dining out, going to the movies, gifts for her grandkids. On a minimum basis, if we gross up the previous number by 30%, we have a monthly need of $5,623. Now, is this a lavish lifestyle for Paula? Absolutely not. This is a minimally acceptable lifestyle. The next step is we have to define her gap, her income gap, and that's the difference between the income Social Security provides her and what she needs to fund the minimally acceptable lifestyle. Now that gap is going to have to come from her savings, and that's very important to understand. Now here's a common characteristic that cuts across all constrained investors. They have an unconditional reliance upon savings to produce income each month that they must have. So in calculating her gap, we know she needs $5,623. We have $2,200 coming from Social Security. So each month the gap is $3,423, or expressed annually, $41,076. Now the next step, and this is an important step, but it's easy. We have to determine if she's a constrained investor by using the income to assets ratio. And that's a very simple thing. All we do is a simple division. We define the required income, we divide it by the assets available to produce income, and this gives us a percentage. If the percentage is 3% or more, then she is a constrained investor. So think about this. We know we need $41,076. We divide by the assets available, $925,000, we get 0.0444 or 4.44%. That's obviously more than 3%, so Paula is a constrained investor. Now, what does it mean in practice? I can tell you in one word. It's caution. It's caution. Paula's reliance upon her savings is unconditional. Her money is under pressure to produce income to fund that minimally acceptable lifestyle. Can she afford investing mistakes? Absolutely not. She has no margin of error, no cushion to absorb the losses. Yet, ironically, she has to be a consistent and disciplined investor in risk assets, which means she needs an investing strategy that will help her manage her emotions during periods when markets are nosediving, something that can keep her durably invested in her strategy. And importantly, her strategy has to protect her against key risks that can reduce or wipe out her income, including timing risk and longevity risk. So that's how we define the constrained investor, and that's how we explain to people what a constrained investor is. And believe me, after many times of doing this, I can tell you that the consumer gets it, and it's very, very effective. So thank you for tuning in. That's a Macchia Minute. Have a great day.